This week on Ask an Expert, buoyancy. Welcome to Ask an Expert, the show where you submit questions to be answered by people around the school. I'm your host, Sam Parody. This week on Ask an Expert, Nicole asked, if you filled a pool with alcohol, would you float? Here to answer Nicole's question is Ms. Welsh and Miss Gordon, two of our science teachers. Welcome, you two.
Thanks for having us.
So, can you help us answer Nicole's question?
For sure we can. So the question for us to look at today is whether or not we're going to be able to float in alcohol like we can float in water. So what we have here is we have ethyl alcohol on this side. The ethyl alcohol has a density of 789 kilograms per meter cubed. And then on this side we have water with a density of 1,000 kilograms per meter cubed. So just looking at that really briefly, we know that the density of the water is greater than the density of the alcohol. So to show a little demonstration to answer our question, we have a little candle here, and this candle has a density slightly less than the water, okay? But its density is greater than the alcohol. So I'm just going to place it in the water, okay? And we can see that it floats in the water, but it's not floating on top very well. Now we're going to put it into the alcohol next. We'll see what happens here. Okay, and it sinks in the alcohol. Now, this candle in our demonstration represents basically what it would be like to have a human body in the water and in the alcohol. Okay, so in the water we're going to float, in the alcohol we're going to sink. And the reason for that is because our density as humans is very close to the density of water. Okay, so that kind of explains why we are going to float. And then our density is obviously greater than the alcohol, so we sink in the alcohol.
So this is all based on a physics principle called buoyant force. And the amount of buoyant force that an object has actually has to do with the amount of fluid that it displaces. So if I place an object that's going to float in both the water and the alcohol, it's going to displace its own mass in that fluid. So if this has a mass of 2 grams, it's going to displace 2 grams of water, just like it would displace 2 grams of alcohol. But because the alcohol is less dense, it actually has to displace more of the alcohol to get the same mass. So you'll actually notice that if you looked closely, like up in my diagram, that the cork floats a little bit lower in the alcohol than it does in the water because it has to displace more of the alcohol in order to get the same amount of mass to be moved out of the way.
Well, thank you very much. That was really helpful, and we hope that answered Nicole's question.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
That's it for this week, but remember, if you have a question you want answered, tweet it to @PACarleton with the hashtag AskAnExpert, and we'll find someone who can answer it for you. See you next week.